of the Women's Missionary Society of the African Methodist Episcopal Church, the 8th District Women's Missionary Society, and Pearl Street AME Church. I welcome you to this COVID conversation, the Town Hall edition. I am so pleased to have joining us this morning our supervisor for the 8th Episcopal District, Supervisor Connie Beelan-Wicker. She is going to come and greet you as well. Supervisor.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Reverend Dr. Constance Beelan-Wicker. I am the supervisor of missions for the 8th Episcopal District, which comprises of states of Louisiana and Mississippi. What a wonderful joy to be here this morning. When I drove up and I saw the campus, wow, wow, wow is what I could say. But actually, 2 words hit my mind, and those 2 words was dare and care. Mm-hmm. Yeah. How in the world could you ever think about passing this place up and seeing all that you saw and wouldn't be daring enough to care? Mm-hmm. I'd like to give commendations to our coordinators, Sister Della Archie and Sister Dolores Stamps. What a wonderful joy that they've done, they've created. And when I think about all of that, all I can say to each one of you all, I dare you to care. When I saw them doing vaccinations and just saw the kids out having fun, and there's food and games and all, how dare you not to care? After you leave here today, after all of the excitement and you're bursting at the seams, I dare you not to care. Thank you.
Amen.
Thank you. While we do have one additional greeting, I do deem it most appropriate to ask our bishop to please stand and be recognized. Please, Bishop Wicker. Yes. It is such a joy. It is such a joy to have him in this room. Though this is a Women's Missionary Society event, you gladden our heart. And I also want to recognize our 8th District President, Sister Brenda Hurst. Would you please stand? Thank you. Now, the work that we have done and the work that we are doing is indeed being recognized at a national level. And we do have special greetings that we share with you now.
Hi, I'm Derek Johnson, President and CEO of the NAACP. I want to congratulate the Women's Missionary Society on your excellent work in informing and educating our community around the pandemic we know as COVID-19. Because of your efforts and many others, we are finding our way through this most critical moment in our history. No one would have ever thought that the church would have to stand up like we are standing up today to ensure our community is cared for. But you are meeting the task. We look forward to continuing our partnership, and congratulations on a successful conference.
COVID Conversations, the Town Hall edition. What's the importance of myself, my family, and my children being vaccinated? How will my child's health be impacted by the COVID vaccine? How do I keep my children safe, mentally and physically? And how do I keep them from suffering the repercussions of COVID and staying out of the hospital? And I'm really wondering, what does the remainder of 22 going into 23 look like for children across this nation? Well, we're here to help you get some of those answers. from what I consider to be able and trusted sources. We intend to give each of you in this room a platform, a safe space for you to ask your questions, even you little body, to ask your questions and express your concerns in a way that's both understood and respected. This conversation comes as a part of the Women's Missionary Society's partnership with the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. We Can Do This public education campaign, and it is being sponsored by the 8th Episcopal District and Pearl Street Church. I am Dr. Dolores Bolden Stamps, Fund Development Chair for the Connectional WMS and Project Administrator for this campaign. I will be serving as your moderator. It is now my pleasure to introduce our esteemed panel. And may I say to you that this introduction, or these introductions, fall so very short of all of their many, many accomplishments. They are esteemed, but we do want to get to the discussion. Dr. Justin Turner is the recently appointed Chief Medical Officer at the Mississippi State Department of Health. He is an internal medicine physician and the CEO of Turner Care, LLC. He currently serves on the COVID-19 task force for the Mississippi State Medical Association. He is a graduate of Jackson State University and Meharry Medical College. He completed his residency at the University of Mississippi Medical Center. Dr. Turner. Yes. Next is Dr. Calibra Jenkins, an undergraduate of Tougaloo College, and earned her medical degree from Howard University School of Medicine and completed her residency and fellowship at Tulane University's Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Medicine, where she served as a chief fellow 2012 through 2013. Currently, she is CEO of Release and Restore Coaching and Consulting Firm, LLC, which focuses on social and emotional wellness and helps to destigmatize and normalize mental health care. Our own Dr. Hersey Sullivan. She is a family medicine specialist in private practice who serves as Chief of Medicine for the Central Mississippi Medical Center. Currently, she is a board member for the Partnership for a Healthy Mississippi. Dr. Sullivan is a graduate of Jackson State and earned her medical degree from the University of Iowa and completed her residency in family medicine at the University of Mississippi School of Medicine in 2012 and 2013. And last we have Mrs. Brown, who is a certified women's health family nurse practitioner, having earned degrees from the University of South Alabama and Maryville University. She is a family nurse practitioner for the women's health component at G.L. Carmichael Family Health Center. She says that her grandmother was her inspiration for pursuing a career in nursing, which she deems as her ministry. Our panel. Thank you for being with us. But I also must, and I hope she's in this room, thank Della Archie. Della Archie, please give her, please. She assembled this panel, and they were so august and so impressive. I said, we must allow more than the people in this room to benefit from their brain trust. So she agreed that we would move from just this panel to this town hall. So when you see her today, give her a high five or some praise because she truly deserves it. So, panelists, as we come to grips with the longevity of COVID, and now the approval of vaccines for children 6 months to 17 years. Many parents and caregivers are hesitant, they're full of anxiety and uncertainty about the vaccines for their children. Many of them that even took the vaccine themselves have hesitancies when it comes to their children. They're asking themselves, what should I do? Who should I believe? We all know that there is a great deal of misinformation out there. So today, I will begin with asking a few questions, and I'm going to start with Dr. Turner. Firstly, the big question, are the vaccines safe, and should children get them, and why?
Okay, so the first response is the vaccines are safe, they are effective, and they help save lives. So yes, children 6 months and above should get the vaccination. I'm answering that question as the Chief Medical Officer for the Mississippi State Department of Health, but I also understand that I'm also going to answer that question as a parent. I'm a father of 2 lovely children, ages 12 and 4, and any child is under the responsibility or the protection of their parent. That's a parental responsibility to protect your child. And these vaccines are the best way that they can be protected from COVID. So my 4-year-old has been vaccinated, and my 12-year-old who has asthma has been vaccinated. So we wouldn't recommend something that we wouldn't do ourselves.
Thank you very much for that. And if there are others of you that would want to weigh in on that question to add to what Dr. Turner has said.
A recent caveat to that perhaps can be the resurgence of smallpox.
Yes.
In New York, and we're not quite sure where else, but perhaps a proportion of that has stemmed from the fact that there are people who consider themselves or who are anti-vaxxers and have made decisions to not vaccinate their children against, did I say smallpox?
You did say smallpox, but
I meant polio.
I know you meant polio.
We're talking about, I'm sorry, I'm thinking monkeypox. Okay, a step back. Polio. We found instances of polio in New York City, in the sewage system in several areas, in several counties and or communities. And perhaps the thought is that people who have not vaccinated their children against polio have contributed to the resurgence of that particular pathogen in our country. We had ameliorated, we've gotten rid of polio around the world, actually, for the most part. And now we're dealing with people who have chosen not to vaccinate their children for whatever reason, and now there's a resurgence. And we are again encouraging people to please vaccinate. And I say that in line with what Dr. Turner said. We're a family, we're a community, you're not an island. What you do affects me, either indirectly or directly. It affects my grandchild, it affects my children. So I not only care about you as another human being, but as a vestige of truth, compliance, and family. So I need you to take care of me, because I'm going to take care of you.
Yeah.
Amen.
Because I want generations of us to be able to take care of each other.
Amen.
Amen.
I think it's important that we just think about chicken pox. We haven't seen chicken pox in years. I had chicken pox as a child, but my cousins who are in their 20s have not had chicken pox. My son has not had chicken pox. And that's because vaccines are safe and effective. We think about the speed in which this vaccine was created as a deterrent for its safety and efficacy. But in real life, the reason that we were able to get this vaccine in warp speed is because the government got out the way. It's not that science was ingenious and did something that was different. Government got out the way and allowed the world, the community of scientists, to work together. So when we work as a community, we can do amazing things. Just as if we work in this community, we can do amazing things. As a mother of an 8-year-old little boy who is vaccinated and boosted, I encourage you, I implore you to do the thing that is best for your young person. There are a myriad of effects that can occur if you have COVID, even in young people. We talk about it in the older populations, but even young people are susceptible to some of those long-term effects. So we have a duty, and it is an honor to care for those young people who the Lord has blessed us with. And I think one of those things is to vaccinate them when it's appropriate. And I think that this is definitely an appropriate time to make sure that your children are covered.
Sure.
Also, to add to it, some statistics that I just read about was since the start of this pandemic, 13 million children have been infected by COVID-19. Not only that, 42,000 were hospitalized. Of that, 1,240 died. So you have to think about it. Or do you just want to sit around and let your children or your grandchildren be a part of the ones that might fall victim to this vaccination, to this virus that's going around? Or do you want to protect them? Me and my husband were very hesitant in the beginning, but during because we were on the front line. He worked with the elderly, so he's seen firsthand a lot of his patients were contracting the virus and also died from the virus. So we had to pray about it, and we made the best decision for our family. So I advise you also to make the best decision for your family, which means get vaccinated. You, your children, your grandchildren, everybody. Just try your best to get vaccinated. It might be a little scary, but that's what we're here for. Ask the questions. Ask the questions that you might think are silly, but we're here to answer them or give you the best direction.
Yes.
Are there side effects
Yeah.
potentially?
Yes.
Are there potential complications? Yes. The relative percentages of those side effects and or complications are minimal relative to the contribution and the benefit that we as individuals receive and we as a community and a nation receive. We've always had to weigh risk benefit in terms of managing health and disease. Even the pills you take for your hypertension or diabetes, there are risks and benefits associated with those medications. You and your healthcare provider come to a decision in terms of what the studies, what the science, what the research has indicated by saying taking this medication allows you or positions you health-wise better to have fewer complications, to have fewer deaths, strokes, heart attacks, renal disease, dialysis, amputations, blindness. So although there are, I wish there were no side effects and no complications, but there is a potential. But when you weigh the complications and or potentially the side effects, as a healthcare professional, it becomes more apparent to me that what these vaccines do in terms of helping us take care of our patients, our families, and our friends can far outweigh the risk.
Thank you for that. Since we know that there is information out there, and some of it may be misinformation about some of the long-term effects of COVID, and would you not to in any way have you become even more reluctant, but so that you can be informed, I would like for you all, whomever, to just talk a bit about some of the long-term effects. Recently, I read an article, it was just last week in the Clarion Ledger, which is our local paper, about this child in Tennessee who's going just terrible, terrible after effects. He's going through rehab now, lost some of his hearing. That's sounds a bit morbid, but it is factual, and I'm going to, after I shared that anecdote with you, I would like for the healthcare professionals.
Just for
to talk.
clarification, excuse me, you're saying that that's from getting COVID?
Yes, yes.
Not from getting
Not
the
from
vaccine.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, thank you for that. No, it's
Yeah.
COVID. He had COVID. He contracted COVID. Yes, yes, yes.
Well,
So-
some of the statistics shows that the patients who have contracted COVID, they end up developing diabetes long term. Another one would be an infection of the heart, and certain stuff like that. Now, I know the medical doctors probably see more of that than I. So.
Yeah, COVID. Go ahead, Doc.
Well, I was just going to say, speaking anecdotally, I have a patient. This gentleman is 73 years old. I'm treating him for hypertension, elevated cholesterol. He has an otherwise unblemished health history, very compliant, which I don't see, but he's very compliant in terms of taking care of his medication, follow up. I mean, he quote unquote does all the right things. He contracted COVID last February. He recently came to my office, I guess this started about 6 weeks ago, with what appeared to be an upper respiratory infection. He's been vaccinated and boosted. He checked the COVID at home with his home test, felt like it wasn't COVID. We initially thought it was sinuses and treated him for that, but somehow his symptoms just worsened. And it's not like him to come back. Normally, once I treat him, he's done. Until his next follow-up appointment. But he kept coming back, and I thought, this isn't like him. There has to be something more going on. And ran all these battery of tests, and this gentleman, as a potential sequelae to having had COVID, you can end up with pulmonary disease. Pulmonary emboli, blood clots in your lungs. You can end up with what we call a cardiomyopathy, which is a weakened heart. You can end up with skin lesions. You can end up with neurologic changes, a fog. This gentleman has, from my health history and having taken care of him perhaps for the past 15 years, has had a stellar history. I got his echo back. He has primary pulmonary hypertension. He has right-sided heart failure. Newly onset. I just referred him to the cardiologist and the pulmonologist. But I'm sitting up here looking at this guy, and he had a mild case of COVID. He wasn't hospitalized. He didn't get drastically ill. That was before we had Paxlovid and other things, and he just weathered the storm. So when you talk about potential long-term sequelae, here's a possibility that this could be associated with that. His lungs and heart have been both potentially adversely affected from this process.
Yeah, so I've kind of scanned the room. I think we probably have a little less than 100 people in here. And I want you all to kind of just look around the room real quick. So we have about less than 100 people. Let's just say it's 100 people in here. All right, so you can turn back around and look at me. So studies show that about 10 to 30% of people have long COVID, which is what our speakers have talked about. So, we've seen a lot on the news about COVID, but you all may haven't seen a lot about long COVID.
Absolutely.
So you get COVID, but even at 2-3 weeks, 2 months, 4, 5, 6 months, patients are still having symptoms. Now, most of y'all that's looking at me probably remember when COVID was first bad, a lot of people had lost the taste of smell, and they had that for several weeks. Well, what we're talking about, Dr. Sullivan and Ms. Brown, people were having heart disease still several months later. They're having lung disease still, having trouble breathing. I have one patient who worked at Nissan plant. He was diagnosed with COVID in January, had to be on a ventilator for a few weeks. It took him approximately 8 months to just be able to get back to work because of how COVID had impacted the lungs. Yeah, his COVID test was normal after about a month, but still, he was still having consequences from what the virus did to the rest of the body. And we're still learning about the virus, but it appears that the virus can impact just about every organ system neurologically. So it can cause the strokes, it can cause the brain. Got people who are not able to walk, since they've had COVID. She mentioned hearing. So it can affect a whole lot of things. So yes, you can have a side effect with the vaccine. I had a side effect with it. My arm was sore, and the next day I was a little groggy. But, would I want to have that temporary just for a couple of days, as opposed to, having trouble breathing 6 months from now and trying to speak to you all and having to take breaks because I'm on oxygen? So it's about outweighing the benefits versus the risk. And that's what you got to ask yourself. So if it's 100 people in here, that's about 10 to 30 people in here that 2, 3, 6 months down the road, they're going to be dealing with some type of long COVID symptom. Think about that.
Let's also think about the children. We don't talk about long COVID, so we definitely don't talk about long COVID in children. But it's a real thing.
It is.
Long COVID, for me, because I'm a psychiatrist, the brain is so important. So when you lose your sense of taste or smell, that says this virus has gotten into your brain. So let's talk about the things that happen in your brain from long COVID. You can have headaches constantly, months after COVID. Think about what that does to a fourth grader who's trying to learn long division. Think about what that does to a seventh grader who's trying to figure out, what is mitosis and meiosis? I got a test on that. Long COVID also causes difficulties in sustaining concentration. Every child needs to be able to sustain concentration to be able to pass whatever test to go to the next grade.
Yes.
So we're putting our children at risk for headaches, problems hanging on to their attention span and concentrating during school, which leads to now you're in trouble. Now mom is constantly, or dad is constantly, grandma is constantly getting phone calls because this little one can't remain focused in class. It causes ridiculous changes in mood. You've got a happy-go-lucky kid who's now irritable all the time, or they're anxious all the time. They're worried all the time. They have difficulty regulating their emotions. Something small as they're eating breakfast and the bowl of cereal falls on the floor. Normally, your child would have just went and got some paper towels and got it up. But now there's a full-blown meltdown because this small thing has resulted in a disproportionate reaction for them. So for me, when we look at long COVID or the after effects of COVID on our children, for me, that was the most terrifying thing. I did not want my son to get COVID because I did not want his brain to be different. And we think, or people have said, there's misinformation that, oh, it's just like the flu, you get it and you're fine. No, you don't necessarily end up okay. You could have all kinds of neurological aspects in addition to the heart aspects, in addition to the lung aspects, in addition to, your blood coagulating more than it normally does, leading to amputations, as has been spoken about. But these young people, these babies, are having these exact same things happen to them. And we have to be aware that you're making a decision to either protect your child from those things or to leave them susceptible to those things. And I would err on the side of caution and make sure that I'm protecting them.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. There's absolutely no denying that this pandemic has taken its toll on all of us, both mentally and physically. And I'm so pleased to have you talk about some of those emotional after effects of COVID, because after all, we are here today to talk about COVID, this conversation, but with a focus on our children, because that's where we are. We have walked through and still walking through that process of having adults become vaccinated, but we now have vaccines for our children, and we want them to do more than survive. We want them to thrives.
Thrive.
That's right. Yes, that's what we want. So we're going to shift gears, and I'm so happy to hear the statistics and want to talk just a bit more about numbers. There's a Showtime documentary. Some of you may have seen it, and if not, you might want to watch it. It's called Bigger Bite. It states that less than 0.5% of black and brown children will become vaccinated by the end of the summer, summer 2023. We don't know if those statistics are correct, but they are a bit frightening given what we just heard. So my question to this panel, and I want all of you to share in this, let's talk about some of the strategies, some of the things that we might do over and beyond this conversation to try and increase those numbers and ensure that our children, our black and brown children, have the best possible opportunities. And I know that probably, I'm making an assumption, Mrs. Brown, but you're in a clinic working with mothers. And what do we say to mothers and fathers to decrease their hesitancy and increase their willingness to get their children vaccinated? So I ask that sort of rhetorical embedded in, what are some of the things that we might leave here with that might help to address those numbers?
Usually what I tell the pregnant women, it's safe during pregnancy to get the vaccination. It'll give you and your baby that protection because we are parents and we're the first defense for anything. And I just sit down and I have the most realist conversation with my patients. I tell them whatever questions you have, feel free to ask. And even at our clinic, I work at a rural area, so it's limited resources. So what we've been doing is been making more incentive for our patients to receive the COVID vaccinations. We have health fair drives every week. We're going out and we're getting the young children 6 months over to 18, and then even our elderly patients, make sure they're getting vaccinated because we saw the numbers and we're seeing daily what impact COVID has done to them as well as the community. So that's all I do.
Other notions?
I think it's important that you touch the people who are closest to you. When everyone leaves here, you'll be armed with additional information that you may or may not have had before you came. So if you're a grandmother and you have children, you talk to your children about the effects of getting COVID on their children. You tell them these are the things that could happen if you don't. Then you use the information that you get here to try to convince them. I think the thing that has happened is everybody is tired of COVID. We are tired of talking about COVID. We are tired of wearing masks. We're tired of not being able to go outside and play the way we want to be able to go outside and play. So we are getting to a point where we have COVID fatigue. But this summer taught me more than anything that if you don't stay vigilant, it will creep up on you. So use the summer and how we stopped talking about COVID, but if you watch the news, the numbers are just as high as they were when we were in the house, if not higher in some aspects. So you have to reach the people around you. Talk to the people around you. Don't get tired. The winter is coming. We're going to be in closed spaces. So use that as an opportunity to say, hey, we're going to be really close to each other. Let's make sure that everybody is protected. And this variant is way more contagious than even measles. Even measles, which is one of the most contagious viruses out there. So we just have to be vigilant in touching the loved ones that we have. And then once we touch them and they go out, it's like a tree. The roots just begin to sprout.
Yeah, so that's very, very good information. And to Dr. Jenkins' point, expectations are important too. So, how many of y'all tired of COVID? I got two hands up, right? So you can be tired of COVID, but guess what?
It's not
COVID
going
isn't
anywhere.
tired of you.
That's right. It's not.
And we are here to tell you that COVID is probably going to be around for quite some time.
Mm-hmm.
All right, go ahead and process that. COVID is probably going to be around for quite some time because, you know, if you all had the impression when things first started that, you know, we would be able to get rid of this within a year or two, and here we are, you know, a few years later and we're still having it, you know, it's kind of like, well, you know, darn if you do, darn if you don't. And it's easy to allow yourself, you know, to kind of get, you know, to the point where you just kind of feel immune about it. But COVID is going to be here for some time. Mm-hmm. Now, if things had started and, you know, we did the mass vaccinations like we wanted to,
Maybe.
we probably would have had less transmission. And when you have less transmission, so right now in Hinds County, we still got a lot of transmission. We've had about 4,000 cases, you know, the last few days. We've had 8 new deaths. We're approaching almost 1 million cases in Mississippi, okay? We've had about 12,000 deaths, all right? When you have a lot of transmission, the variants can change, all right? So the virus changes over time. They have what they call mutations, and you have new variants. So, you know, you all heard of this with the flu. You know, heard of swine flu, H1N1, H1N3. It's all the flu, but it's different variants, all right? That's why you get a new flu shot every year, and, you know, the goal of the scientists is try to predict whatever type of mutations have developed in it. So we're probably going to be seeing that with COVID. As a matter of fact, we're working on, or the scientists are working on a new vaccine that targets specifically the Omicron variant better than, you know, what has been designed beforehand. So that may be coming out next month. It may be October, November, but be prepared for that. This Omicron variant has been changing, oh my God, so fast, all right? Now, fortunately, it doesn't appear to be as deadly as the Delta variant, but like Dr. Jenkins said, it's way, way more contagious. So what has happened now? So we're back in school. It's about to start getting cold. So we're going to see likely more spread, all right? But the goal is not just for you to not get COVID, but the goal is for COVID not to get you, all right? We don't want you to die. We don't want you to be hospitalized. So Dr. Jenkins talked about the long-term effects psychologically. I actually have a patient who had a spouse who was diagnosed with COVID and dealt with a lot of, you know, consequences from it, you know, affected lungs, affected heart, couldn't work, had to take time off. So the man felt like, you know, he couldn't provide. All right, so imagine those effects. So he started dealing with depression, started dealing with anxiety. All right, now COVID got better, but his psychological didn't get better. So he succumbed to suicide. Okay? This is real. Now, even before COVID, we was dealing with 1 out of every 5 persons that have some type of behavioral health condition, right, Dr. Jenkins? So, you know, we know that number is going to likely worsen.
And not only has it worsened generally, when you look at the youth, we are in the midst of a mental health crisis for young people. It was already bad before COVID. We had, in the black community, the rate of suicide had quadrupled 4 times. The rate of suicide among children 5 to 12 was insane. So we were already headed in a downward spiral. And now with COVID and social isolation, and then having to deal with the fact that my mom died, or my mom and my dad died, now I have to go live with somebody else. The safety that school provides for children, and they were out of school, you have kids with unforetold levels of trauma going back into the school system because of things that happened to them because they were stuck at home with people who are predators. So we have to understand that the level of trauma, the level of mental health problems that we are dealing with right now, and when I say dealing with, I mean that are occurring because we are not dealing with them at all. We're not talking about it. We're not providing children with treatment. The level of prevalence within the community is astounding, and we have not done what we needed to do as a society to help deal with those children who are dealing with those things. So yeah, we are in. We're talking about an adult succumbing to suicide. There are children succumbing to suicide. So we are definitely in a problem.
So to her point, vaccinations And boosters provide the best level of protection for your child, for your grandchild, for your niece, for your nephew, okay? So we've already laid it out there. COVID is not going away anytime soon, all right? And at this rate, they're going to be exposed. They're going to be exposed. You're going to be exposed if you hadn't, all right? So think about it like a rainstorm, like a tsunami, all right? Now, we've had a lot of rain here the last couple of weeks, and thank God for holding the rain today. Thank you.
Amen.
So think about us being, or your children being in a rainstorm. Now, there's several different tools that they can have to protect them from getting wet. What are some of those tools? Got
Raincoat.
what else?
Rain boots. An umbrella.
Boots, umbrella, right? Now, you can have all of those tools on, but it's highly likely that you're still going to get wet. Is that right? Now, if you had no tools, the amount of wetness you would have would be even more, right? So when you think about the tools to help protect you or minimize the damage, the vaccine offers the most amount of protection, okay? They're more likely to still be able to be at school because if they get COVID, it won't be as severe, all right? If they're up to date with their boosters, there's less likely to have to miss time from school and to be sick, to be hospitalized, and to die from it, all right? So as Dr. Sullivan talked about before, protecting you and protecting me, think about it beyond just yourself. So the more of us who are vaccinated and boosted and up to date, the less we have transmission, the less likely we keep seeing mutations, and we get to a point where we're able to have better control of it. Does that make sense?
Aren't they awesome? I mean, they are awesome. What a brain trust. And we're now going to open the floor for any questions that you may have. The mic is there, and if they did not answer your questions in their discussion, please do. Please do. This is your opportunity. Please. Yeah, right there.
Come on, Madam President.
Yeah, Madam President. No, she didn't.
So you all have been very, very informative. I've worked with children in child care for 18 years. When we had a child that would come to the child care center, they had to have their immunization form and all of this type of stuff. We've had some that would come in that say, oh, no. We, because of their religion, they didn't believe in vaccinations, so they would have to get a notarized paper, you know, all of this. So my question is, what would it take for us to get COVID to be one of the vaccinations that the children have to go to schools? Because most times, you know, even if some of the parents, unfortunately, I don't know if they got COVID or not, and they send them on anyways, so they're open to, you know, the other kids getting it and all of this good stuff. So what is it, do you think, that has to happen in order for that to, since it doesn't look like COVID's going anywhere, so I think there should be a vaccination that we should have.
I'm going to say this because Dr. Turner can't say this.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. Unfortunately, we allowed politics to stem into some things that were public health concerns. And because, in the state of Mississippi, we have leadership that picks and chooses when they want to invade personal space. And invading personal space in order to protect society at large has not been the choice that our leadership has made. And because we have allowed politics to get into it, at this point, I don't think we have a chance to make it one of those things that is mandated for return to school. Mississippi has a wonderful record of We used to. Before COVID, we had a wonderful record.
It was one of the areas we shined in.
We had over, I want to say over 95%. I want to say it was 98%.
It was 98%.
98% rate vaccinations. Everybody was vaccinated. That's why you don't see measles and you don't see mumps and you don't see chickenpox, because everybody is vaccinated. And the more the community is vaccinated, the more the person who isn't vaccinated is protected. And that's the way vaccines work. That's what herd immunity is. And they talk about we want herd immunity, but then they won't do the things that will ensure herd immunity is present. So unfortunately, I don't think we're going to get to a place where the vaccine is on that list of things. And unfortunately, I think that with the level of disinformation that is around, the number of people who are going to stop getting their children vaccinated is going to rise. You're going to have more people who are seeking those religious exemptions or medical exemptions, and people will sign those papers, and our levels will decrease as a result. But again, that's one of the areas that Mississippi did really, really well in, and as a result of politics being in places that it should not be, we're gonna see the effects of that.
I can stay right here. Right?
Yes, we can hear you.
So I heard what each of you has said, and my question is, from what you are saying to us, do you think that more of these town halls need to be held in the various communities throughout, particularly for people of color?
So the question for the wonderful audio team, the question is, do we think more town hall meetings like this one should be held, especially for Black and brown communities?
I'll start. So the easy answer is yes. So I think we have to take non-traditional approaches to reach the masses. All right. So, there's a quote that I derived during the pandemic, and it was basically, you cannot correct if you do not connect. All right. So if we know that distrust is out there, if we know that, those moms that you've been seeing, Ms. Brown, have some hesitation, how do we get over the hump? You can't do that if you just on the news and just giving press conferences in some of our communities. You have to meet the people where they are. So we thank you, Dr. Stamps. We thank you, Sister Della. We thank you, Bishop, for allowing a space like this where we can allow you to ask a question that you probably can't ask when you're sitting on your couch just watching the news, because everyone's concerns are valid.
Yes.
Everyone. If you feel hesitant, there's a reason why you feel that way. So all of us have had patients, and guess what? We asked them, why do you feel that way? Why do you feel this level of distrust? What are your concerns? Guess what? Your concerns are important to us. And we don't force anything on anyone. We just give education, we give the data, and we give love. I have patients who have cancer and continue to smoke. I don't kick them out because they keep smoking. I educate, I get them data, I get them facts. Some decide to quit, some don't. But our job is just to meet the patients where they are. So having town hall meetings like this helps. So just some historical context, and you may know this, and you all may know this, but this is something that Mississippi can be proud of. So when the COVID pandemic was first starting, and it was kind of, at some of the worst parts, the data showed that over 70% of the deaths in Mississippi were in people of color. All right? Now, what percentage do the people of color make up in Mississippi?
30.
Only in the 30s. So over 6% of the cases and over 70% of the deaths. So that's what we call a disparity. That's what we call a health disparity. That's alarming, you all.
Yes, it is.
Like, that was really, I don't cry a lot, but I cried when I saw that data. Because that was basically telling us that, hey, there's going to be some people that all of us know personally
Yes.
that's not going to make it. And we were sitting there like, man, no matter what we do, it's going to be hard to minimize this tsunami. And sure enough, it started happening. It happened with people that we knew. It happened with people that were, on the news, and people that were leaders in the community. And you all know some of the people that I'm talking about. So we had to do something different if we're going to get different results. It's insanity to keep doing the same thing and expecting different results. So what did we do? We worked to meet the people where they were. So we got with our faith leaders throughout the state. We got with legislative black caucus and politicians. We got with our HBCUs, Jackson State and other universities. We got with our barbershops and nail salons. I just left my barber, and we did vaccinations at his barbershop because he knows some people that I don't know. Because when you go to the barbershop and when you go and get your hair, sometimes you don't have conversations with your stylist that you don't have with anybody else. That's a very personal, intimate space. So I equipped my barber with the knowledge and education, and he equipped his constituents, and that trust allowed us to have that space like this where we can vaccinate someone who is probably not going to take the traditional route. So now, Mississippi, African Americans per capita, we lead the nation with the amount of African Americans who've been vaccinated per population. That's something to clap your hands about. But it took things like this, non-traditional settings, and just meeting the people where they are.
I think the most important thing that Dr. Turner just said is non-traditional settings. I'm amazed that you guys went to the barbershop, because what we do now is equip barbers with mental health information because it's a personal and very intimate thing. I think we have to start thinking outside of the box. I love town hall meetings. I love panels. I love to be able to give information. But this population is probably a population who's been vaccinated. It's great to gain information to give to our loved ones, but we need to hit the people who are not thinking about this.
Yeah.
So we need to be posted up outside of Walmart. We need to be sitting in the parking lot when Jackson State is having a game.
Yeah.
We need to be posted in these high school parking lots when they're having games on Friday nights. We have to meet the people literally where they are, because if they have to come to us, the people who think like us are coming here. We have to meet the people who are saying, nope, I'm not thinking about that. I don't care that they're having a COVID town hall. That's not important to me. We have to meet them where we are. So we have to start to, even if we have to get in some mobile vans and drive down the street in communities with a bullhorn and talking about COVID. Yeah. We might need to do that. You may have some people who come out and get vaccinated, and that might be the one person who's the person in the family. I had a friend. Everybody in the family was waiting on her. She's a CNA. Everybody was waiting on her to get vaccinated.
Wow, come on.
I had to fight with her. But when I got her to get vaccinated, the whole family, and when I say whole family, I mean all of her 10 siblings and their families, was waiting on that one person.
Wow.
So we are going to have to move into the spaces where these people are in order to really affect change the way we want to see it happen.
That's good.
Excellent.
First of all, thank you all for all the information, but I know mainly we've been discussing vaccinations. Tell me what your thoughts are on testing, because I've experienced that not only in my home but at my job, where we're testing folks. Some tests are coming out positive, and the other ones are coming out negative, and it may be the tester. So just give us a little bit of information on what you think about how significant testing is for the home and workplace.
Okay, I'll try to wrap it up briefly if I can. So we still are encouraging testing, all right? So let me point this out real quick. A lot of people who are having issues with sinuses, they're having drainage, they're having cough, they're having, chills, congestion, they think that it's just sinuses, all right? Sinuses are bad in Mississippi. Do not make that assumption, okay? If you're having those symptoms, really, or any symptom, you got to assume it's COVID until you know it's not, all right? Because by the time you wait day 4 and day 5, you've done your hotty-toddy and you've took your over-the-counter stuff, you've already been around someone else and you spread it, okay? So if you're having symptoms, go get tested, all right? Now, you all are likely eligible to get home COVID tests, and some of you probably already have it. And if you've used up the ones that you've had, call the health department, see if you can get some more or whatever line that is. Those at-home COVID tests are rapid tests, and they do have utility. Now, let me make this clear. If you have symptoms and you take a home COVID test and it comes back normal, that does not mean that you don't have COVID. It's very possible that you have gotten tested, so early to the point where basically the virus has not produced enough of replication to produce an abnormal sample. All right? So in our clinical practice, we kind of take the mindset, if it walks like a duck, talks like a duck, quacks like a duck, then it's a duck. All right? So don't get a normal at-home COVID test and think that you can go ahead and head to the party and go and kick it. Okay? If you're having symptoms, get tested. If you have a normal test, that's when you want to contact your doctor or nurse practitioner or physician assistant and get a PCR test, which stands for polymerase chain reaction. So we take some tissue and basically in the lab, it gets replicated a whole lot to allow you to have a more reliable picture of what it is. All right? So get tested, but just know that a normal at-home rapid test doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have COVID. Now, if you have a positive PCR test, that doesn't mean that you still have an active case of COVID. All right? There's some people who've had COVID and they have a positive PCR test 3-4 weeks later. And basically, that's just debris material that's still in your body, but you may not be actively still having COVID and you're not actively contagious. So you don't have to have a normal PCR test to go back to work. If your job is still requiring you to have that, contact your provider so they can maybe write a letter to say, hey, you're asymptomatic, you've done your isolation, and, you're safe to go back to work. At that point, you can try a rapid test because more than likely that's going to be normal 2 weeks later. Okay? All right. I was going to say something else about testing. Does that kind of answer most of your questions about testing? Yeah, so you still need to quarantine for 5 days. It's the latest guidelines. Quarantine for at least 5 days. Now, after day 5, if you're still sick, you're still having fever, you're still having severe symptoms, then you want to take more precaution and still probably quarantine longer. But if you've had 5 days and you're feeling better, like most of our patients have gotten better fairly quickly within 24 to 72 hours. But wear your mask for an additional 5 days. Okay? So a lot of it, we got to take some responsibility on our own to make sure that we're protecting ourselves, we're protecting the community too. Because you still possibly could be contagious day 6, day 7, just depending upon how sick you are. Is there a question about treatment, or can I cover that real quick? Please. Okay, so real quick, treatment. All right, we have more treatment options now than we had when things first started. So there's some antiviral medications called Paxlovid, all right, and there's another one as well. If you're not familiar with those, talk to your provider, because are you all familiar with Tamiflu? All right, so Paxlovid and molnupiravir are kind of similar to Tamiflu, where you take it within the first 5 days of having symptoms, and it minimizes how sick you'll be, it minimizes your chance of being hospitalized, and it minimizes your chance of dying from it. But you need to get on it as soon as you get symptoms, which goes back to getting tested and getting tested early, okay? You can't use them in pregnancy, but that's an option. There's also something called monoclonal antibodies, which is also something that you can have. Now, there's some people who have moderate to severe immunocompromised states. Maybe you got cancer and you're getting chemo or something like that. You may not produce a strong enough of a response to the vaccine. There's a medicine called Evusheld that you can take that's like prevention on the front side that will give you a stronger chance of being able to fight COVID, okay? A lot of people have been vaccinated but hadn't been boosted. The same mindset that helped you decide to get vaccinated is the same mindset that we want you to have to get boosted. Because if you was vaccinated and you finish your series and it's been 6-7 months, the amount of protection that you once had, you no longer have. So get the booster with the same mindset that helped you get the vaccine, okay? So if you finish your first series of vaccinations and it's been 5 months since you finished, it's time to get your booster. If it's been 4 months since your first booster, it's time to go and get your second booster, okay? All right.
I already asked one, but I have another one since he said what he said.
Okay. And we'll hear from President Hurst and then back to you. Okay.
Yes, I was going to ask, is there a timeline for the next booster? Is that in the works at all?
You talking about the next booster that I mentioned that the science is working on?
Yes.
Yeah, they're working on it as soon as they can. Yeah, I don't think we can give you.
November is the target because they want to get it out for the fall.
Yeah,
President Biden is shooting for September, and it's supposed to be a type of vaccine that not only works specifically toward the Omicron variant, but it also works against the Alpha and the Delta variant. And Pfizer is working on that and working to get it approved currently. and the anticipation is that it may be available in September.
Don't wait on it.
Right.
Don't
Right.
wait on it. Get vaccinated and boosted now, because anything can happen between now and when it's available here. And you don't want to put yourself in a situation where you're sicker than you have to be because you are waiting on this wonderful vaccine or new vaccine that's coming out.
We've had 8 deaths recently here in Mississippi. All right? People are still dying from COVID. But you got to get this if you don't get nothing else that we say today. The vast majority of people who have died recently from COVID have either not been vaccinated at all, have not been boosted, or they are at high risk for underlying health conditions. And we have children, like my 12-year-old, who has asthma. Some of you all have children who have underlying health conditions, and they are even at high risk.
And excuse me, the Lord, I just had a thought. It's important, a Paxlovid. You know, we share medicines a lot. I got one from my cousin got it. I took 2, she took.
Right.
The medications that are currently available for treatment, there are routine medications that you may take, such as statins or antipsychotics or what. You can't take those medications at the same time that you're taking Paxlovid. So don't do that. Don't go, your cousin took 2 and she got 1 more left and I'm going to go. No. Talk to your healthcare provider and see if, because there were people who wanted me to treat their son who was in from out of town. And I said, I don't know his health history. I don't know what his renal function is. I don't know. There's so much information that I don't have about this person that they may or may not have, that under these particular circumstances you want to be particularly cautious.
And these medications are free.
Yes.
Okay? There's no additional cost for these medications, so we got to utilize them. I've talked to too many patients who...
Where do you go to get them?
So actually with Paxlovid, your pharmacy can actually give it without a doctor's prescription. But we, like Dr. Sullivan's point though, you know, we really want you to allow your healthcare provider or in urgent care someone to advise you, because you may have some medications that we may just need to hold for a couple of weeks while you're taking it, because there could be an interaction. Okay? All right.
So my question is,
Yes, ma'am.
are we still to take the flu shot, the shingle shot, the pneumonia shot? Yeah, is the question.
Yes,
that,
ma'am.
You know, because some people think that if they've been vaccinated, they don't need to take those. And that's why I'm asking the question, because people look at, they're asking that.
This is in addition to, not instead of, any of those vaccinations. You want to take a pneumonia vaccine, and they have a new one out that covers 24 strands, I think. You want to take your shingles vaccine. You definitely want to get your flu vaccine. You can take flu and COVID in the same day. So you want to be doing this in addition to, not instead of, those other vaccines.
And even if you've had shingles.
Even if you had shingles, you can still get the shingles vaccine. And the newest shingle vaccine is way more superior than anything we've had before, too. Okay? All right. So, yeah, definitely get those. But talk to your provider, because every patient is different. All right? Now, if you've had a significant reaction in the past, you know, to the flu vaccine or to certain type of vaccines, then there may be some different parameters that you need to take. You may not need to take the flu and the COVID vaccine the same day, but it's different. But you can. But that's why we want you all to let your healthcare providers guide you. Like, I've seen too much of people listening to their uncle, nephew, cousin, somebody on Facebook. We are here, and we are very accessible. Ms. Brown is at GA Carmichael. Dr. Sullivan has her practice. Look, there's no shortage of access to providers. There's free clinics that's around, you all. So let your medical team guide you, because if you all was letting the street committee guide you, nobody would have done anything, because they were saying blacks couldn't get COVID. Y'all remember that?
I do.
We perished for lack of what?
Knowledge.
All right.
And I think we have another couple of questions, and, okay.
I was dealing for her.
Okay, sir, didn't you have a question in the back? Would you give him the mic, because this,
And great questions. Thank you all so much, because we're doing this for you all. So we appreciate you all actually asking us questions and giving us
My
feedback.
question is the dosage schedule for the children the same as it is for the adults?
No, it's
So-
reduced.
So do they do dose 1, dose 2, booster?
She's asking
The-
for frequency, or are you asking dosage? Or are you asking
Frequency.
both?
Well, I'm thinking that the dosage would be less.
It is.
Is it the frequency the same?
Similar, yes. There's the 3-week timeline, 3 to 4 week timeline. You give the initial, because they're recommending it for 6 months and above. And the amount or the concentration of the vaccine has been appropriately decreased for the various age ranges. For children 6 months to 4 years, there's a dose range for the Moderna, for the Pfizer. They don't really recommend J&J for the children. And then for 5 and above, there's another strength, a little higher strength. And I didn't do the numbers because depending on which vaccine you take, it's like Moderna is 30 milligrams, and then 10 milligrams for the kids 6 months to 4 years, and then it's 30 milligrams for 5 years to 17. So it just, but it just know that it is reduced, but the timeline is similar,
Good question.
starting at 6
Great questions.
I'm here with the Jackson Hines Public Library System, and we always like to distribute accurate, credible information like we're getting here today. Are there any hubs of information that y'all would recommend for us to promote for people who come into the library to go to, or anywhere we can print out information that we can kind of distribute, or anything like that we can do?
Yeah, the Mississippi Health Department has a ton of resources on the website. If you're looking for, printable material, you can give us a call, and we can see what we can provide. But yeah, there's a ton of information, for those who have access to the internet, because we do understand everyone, don't have access, and we appreciate, what you all are doing.
And I also,
CDC?
CDC too.
I also suggest that you go to the We Can Do This campaign website, which is a part of CDC, and there's a plethora of information there. And also, they have taken a stab, still work to do, in having some of the voices and some of the images look like us. They still have some work to do, but they have made substantial gains there. Many of the messages are from medical professional, African American, physicians of color. So I know you have to serve all, but just in case you're looking for relatable material, it's there.
And each entity has a hotline. So if they can't get to the library, or they lose the printed material, the health department's hotline is open at 7 p.m., I think. And so you can call and ask questions, and they can direct you to providers and where to get treatment and where to get vaccinated. So the hotline can answer several questions for you.
Yes. Where's the mic? And the reason we are really focused on the mic is that this is going to be posted again, the recording, so we want to hear the questions.
What is the recommendation for masking?
What is the state's recommendation, or what is your healthcare provider's recommendation? Your healthcare provider is recommending that you wear a beautiful KN95 like you have anytime you're in public. You want to wear that anytime you're in public, because this is still an airborne disease. And if you're sitting across the table from somebody who has COVID, you are more at risk if you do not have a mask. When you go to church, everybody should have on a mask. When you send your child to school, even though it's not required, you should be teaching your child, wear your mask all day, take it off to eat lunch, put your mask back on. You want to wear your mask anytime you are in the presence of people who are not inside your immediate household. These 100-year-old public health recommendations have worked for years. They kept physicians, nurses, PAs, MPs safe when we had no vaccine. Washing your hands, wearing your mask is the best way to prevent the spread of this disease. Now,
You gotta look strange. I was on a plane recently, and maybe me and one other person had on a mask, and I was just waiting for somebody to ask me. I was ready.
Yeah.
I was locked and loaded.
because at that point it becomes a statement. I am making a statement to everybody around me that you should have on a mask.
Yeah, it may be your choice, but as a healthcare professional, I understand that this is important, not only to me and the people I take care of, but to my family, and I'm also doing it for you. So I got some crazy stares, but I'm okay.
Yes, transmission in Hines County is still up there. Okay, like I said, we had 4,000 new cases recently. All right, so the question is, are you in a space where transmission, is high? And if you are in an indoor setting, it's definitely recommended. Now, if you're outside and you're not in close proximity, to other people, then it's a little different. And you also got to take into consideration if you have underlying health conditions. Because if you have underlying health conditions, you are at greater risk. Now, if you are, 14 and you don't have any known health conditions and you're up to date with your visits to your doctor, that's a little bit different if you're outside at the high school football game. But if you have underlying health conditions, if you're 65 and older, then your mask offers you an additional layer of protection to be able to help. Okay? I'm blessed that, I haven't been diagnosed with COVID at all since the pandemic. And I treat thousands and thousands of patients. All right? Now, that's grace. It's not luck. That's grace. But all that being said, just echoing Dr. Jenkins, your mask offers you a good layer of protection despite what you hear other folks saying and despite what other folks are not doing.
And let me say this. We haven't talked about misinformation much, but you will not die from rebreathing your own breath. The level of carbon dioxide in that mask is not going to harm you. Okay? So everybody who thinks that, you're rebreathing your own air and that's going to hurt. No, it's not. Wear your mask.
I even still have the sign on my door, a mask is required when you enter.
Likewise.
Because, people come in and think it's a sinus infection or their allergies are flared up. Because we have one of the highest pollen ragweed counts in the nation.
Right.
So people are always reacting. But, in just the best interest of patients, because I've diagnosed people who thought they had sinus infections and, it's just a little cold, but I want to be tested. Yeah, you have COVID. And I'm glad you had on a mask in my office because perhaps everyone else in the office will have COVID. So it's important to me that people mask up in my office, and I try and keep masks available for people who don't come, because once they're somewhere else and then they come in, some people are not thinking about that.
Thank you so very much. We cannot thank you enough, Mrs. Brown, Dr. David Sullivan, Dr. Jenkins, Dr. Turner. You have been absolutely brilliant. The information, we like to think that we, as said, that we are informed, but you can never, ever assume that you know enough about this pandemic and this disease. You have certainly enlightened me. And I'm certain that there are those in the audience that have been enlightened. Your questions were so appropriate.
Yes,
and
thank
we
you.
thank you for that, which means that you were engaged. So now we have new information that we can share to those close to us, since that's where it starts. So we thank you so much. But she is in the room now, and I want you all to thank Della Archer. Because it was she who identified these brilliant minds. And I think I told the story before how I certainly took advantage of that opportunity. And this panel will not stop here at Pearl Street. It's going to be edited down. It will be on several YouTube channels. The audio will be on iHeartRadio. This was invaluable information. And one thing that we do like to party, but we listen to the radio too. So we are taking these messages beyond this room today. And it would not have been possible without Della Archie and the work that has gone into this entire event. We have, just for a minute, the Connectional WMS has this is our second grant, $180,000 grant. The first one was $180. We had $150. They gave us 30 more. And our intended audience is us. And is it a lot of work? Is it more than I really want to do? Yes. But for me, this is not a transaction. This is part of our work as missionaries. And so it's very important. We certainly heard our bishop, and we have yet another charge, and we take it with all of the importance that I think he shared as he uttered those words. So.